fashion and artists and stuff like that. But it can be like whatever your version of it is. And just basically, I was wondering if the amount of shows for you is different now
than before. No. So in that way, well, shows are different. Like my career has had a lot of like hills and valleys. It's not just a 2-year. I've been working for about 20 years. So sometimes there are lean years and fat years. But right now there's actually quite a bit of work. It surprises me. When I was doing installations, I was really hectic. And then there was like a slow, kind of fallow period. But I think I'm, with drawings and printmaking and little pieces and big pieces, there's kind of a variety of things, and sometimes they're historical shows, so they might want something from another time. So they're different kinds of shows. They're not like, a big museum show, but there's a lot of available.
Tell me a little bit about what this big project is in the.
It's in Philadelphia, and it's the convention center, and it's the old Reading Railroad Station, and the building itself is about 260 feet by 600 feet, which is bigger than a football field, I think. It's maybe 4 acres of interior space. And if it goes through, it'll be, it's sprung from the ceiling and attached and pulled from a whole network of sort of, why can't I remember how this is said?
We'll take a look at it.
It's just pulled into place with guy wires.
So that's very, recession-like, if you were going to say.
Yeah, but it's different. What's been curious is that what I would want to do, like the best case scenario was to be an artist, solid. Every day, that's what I want to do. It used to be that I could work a day teaching, and that was really fun, and do like a visiting gig, and that was fun. And most of the time I was an artist. Now it's that since the money isn't coming from sales at all, and I was never like such a big seller, but there was a moment when I was, and all the money I made, I just had the gallery hold it. And so they gave me an allowance, a stipend. So the good times and the bad times, I was just on salary. And then one day I got this phone call that said, there's like the pot's empty, and it was like, oh geez, now what do I do? And I've been teaching for so long. In the early days I was teaching an awful lot. And I'd been dreaming of stopping. And so what I did was I applied for a lot of teaching jobs. And I started making models for these commissions. I was invited to do commissions. Commissions are not like studio work. It's very legal. It's very lot of paperwork. You're dealing with committees and contracts, which are really complicated. And given the nature of this work, it's very it's hard to say to them, trust me, And I also can't it's done on site, so it's very hard to sort of say, of course I know exactly what I'm doing and it'll look exactly like this, because so many things change. So I've always stayed out of that arena. I also don't like, working directly with a committee. It's hard. Dealing with a dealer is complicated enough, and that's a very simple relationship.
So does that make it?
It's horrible.
Is there a difference in sales because of that?
I don't know. I haven't done one. I haven't done it yet. I don't know if it. It's funny if I think about other artists who've sort of moved out of gallery work and started making large outdoor commissions. They sort of fade from the gallery arena, from the kind of critical arena, and so the conversation is really different. And like I said, I'm not your best person sort of in committee work. I don't sort of believe in democracy in that way, like, gee, let's all agree, so.
How about with sales versus now and before the recession?
I've never been a strong seller. It's just, the work is just too, I mean, I don't know what the reasons are, because there are a lot of people who sell much more ephemeral work than mine. So I don't know what the reasons are. But there was one moment in 1984 where I did very well. And that was it. And I haven't sold much at all in 3 years, in that marketplace. I did a big commission in Dallas, Texas for GTE, and that was the first big commission, and that was a lot of fun. And it was basically, they had this huge building and they needed art objects for it, and I did make a model for the first time and did that. And that was really great. It was the people I was working for, it was very one-on-one. It wasn't, I didn't, the city and government and didn't have to come in. It wasn't percent for art. It was like a different kind of organization. So that was a sale, but it wasn't through the galleries. It was, and it's different kind of work. Like again, you're going from model to kind of 6 months of organization and then building something. What I like to do is like stay home, because I'm like this little cottage industry, and that's my, so it's like, what's funny is that I can sort of get these jobs, and my teaching job is, I'm a professor at Columbia full-time, and and it's a great job. I mean, it's a great job, but it's an awful lot of work, and I'm teaching undergraduates, which means it's very time-consuming, and I'm also teaching at the University of Hartford. So by the time I come back home, there's so much sort of catching up on things to do that there's no time. And then with the organizational thing, with this, it's like I'm not a studio artist, and that makes me completely nuts, So things are good, but they're good in this way that I don't want them to be. I just want to be, home, doing what I do best, actually,
So do you think, this is kind of a philosophical question, but do you think there's a relationship between the quantity of money and the quality of work?
Yes and no. When I'm really flush, when I have a lot of money, or it feels like, a lot of money, I've never been like wildly successful. I get the best tools. I can pay the people who work here better. We have great lunches. The tone feels better. It's not so desperate. I get expansive. I don't, buy a Mercedes or, it just feels like you're free to play more, So in that way, but we're not talking about great excesses of money. And, but this place is expensive to operate. So doing nothing costs a lot of money. Right. Keeping it heated and machines in order and, storage, doing nothing. If I don't make anything, it costs a lot of money. Because the operation is I'm making large scale sculpture, so it's not economical. It's a kind of catch-22.
So then does this have any effect on the size of your work?
Never. My gallery keeps saying, will you make little pieces, please? And I'm thinking, wow, it's a good idea. I know it's a good idea, and I've been thinking about it, and I'll occasionally make what I think is a small piece, and I'll think, great, they'll be so pleased. And usually I get this thing coming back like, could you make it a little littler? Like my little pieces feel like medium. I don't know what these words mean, but no, my scale is big. It's just that's the way it is. That's the size it is.
Right. And how should you have to compensate?
Well, it isn't even if I could figure out how to compensate, I would. It's sort of like, making a model car is different than making a car, and driving a car is a different experience than driving a scooter. The work is this size. It's just big, and if I've made small pieces, they usually come in series, and then I keep complicating the issue by thinking, well, these 10 look better than this one, and so it gets bigger anyway. It tends to be that the damn stuff is big. It's just big.
How about like the effects outside of money, like relationships with other artists or relationships with dealers? I mean, a lot of people say the recession has brought artists more close and intimate. I don't know what you think.
I think that's true. I think there was so much money rolling around, and there were so many cocktail parties, and the conversation was a lot about business, and who your fabricators were, what you sold, and how. I mean, it was not interesting. And now it's, I think it is better. I mean, it's not like I go out and talk to many people. I mean, Ursula is upstairs, so we talk. And I better do something with this, right? And that's great. And, you know, I have really good friends and really good art friends, but I've always had them too. But I notice if you go to an opening, people are a little more genuine and it feels a little better, you know, or what's talked about is kind of more necessary things are talked about, or more interesting things are talked about. I mean, probably the best times were when I was first out of school and there were a lot of bars and you'd throw things at each other, you know.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, I was wondering if anything, if the recession affects the tone of your work, because I went to an exit art exhibit and it was very depressed. And
yeah. I don't know if it's the recession. I don't know, but in fact, I mean, not sort of what you're looking at in back of me here, but the last piece I did is very moody and very dark, but I don't think it has anything to do. It was also the most unbuyable piece you could ever, you know, it was an installation again, which I hadn't done in 10 years. So, and it was actually hearkening back to older work. And I don't think it has to do with the recession. I think it had to do with like my life and what was necessary in it. But it just happens to be that, I mean, I think it's funny because actually everyone's getting lighter and brighter, actually, you know, and I've been, my whole reputation is based on sort of like happy art, a misnomer, but there's an assumption that the work is very fanciful and open and colorful. And now I think, interesting, there's burnt wood, you know, rusted steel, burnt beds, you know, rusty springs. I mean, it's really tar. It's all tarred. So I'm thinking, what happened? I don't feel, I mean, what's interesting thing is I don't think I feel depressed. I think that it's because I feel very strong in the work that I can go to other levels. And it's probably because there's almost no interest in what I'm doing. So it's like, that's not exactly true. There is some interest, but it's not the same. It certainly is not the same as it used to be. And but I think I'm taking I always took myself seriously. I think I can explore things that I really was fighting against. I thought most art was so morbid and so depressing and so formal and so brown and so dark. And, you know, real art was, you know, gray in a big cube, you know, or slabs of rusted steel. And it also seemed very manly and opaque. And so I was on some move to make sculpture have a different language. And now I'm not fighting that anymore. So I can make it whatever it needs to be for me. And that might be rusty brown things, you know. So I can't believe I'm coming back on my whole you know, rationale.
Do you think the government should help artists out more? Do you think like the Reagan-Bush era was worse, or maybe Clinton will make things better?
I think because he is a musician and yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think it's a better climate. I think art was tremendously mistrusted and, you know, not respected, I guess, and, you know, was not considered kind of a major part of one's life. And I think because Clinton's an artist, you know, or partially one, you know, that he'll add again a kind of enthusiasm, like the way, I mean, you don't remember this, but when Kennedy was president, he was so cultured, and it felt great to be an artist because you sort of got points in it. So I think it will be better. The government is always late funding things. I mean, I'm always on granting committees, and it was like it's almost the second someone doesn't need a grant, they get one, because again, it has to be consensus. 6 people have to agree that this person is okay or interesting. And if one person thinks they're great and another one thinks they don't know what they're doing, generally they don't get a grant. So I don't know about government funding. I think government enthusiasm would be nice. Or, people's generally understanding that artists are not exactly outsiders and they're sort of important within the culture. Legit.
Great. I know I wasn't supposed to talk about this, but this is on a good level.
Okay.
I noticed that the New York Times article almost deliberately avoided saying Max Protege. And
Yes.
deliberately avoided saying that you lived in a place in Manhattan.
Yes.
That you had a whole house. And they also avoided saying your next project involved a $500,000
Yes.
commission. And, I just thought that wasn't fair to you. And if
Yeah.
you wanted to respond to that, or
Yeah.
if you wanted to say something back to them, or...
Yeah, it was probably the strangest event that's ever happened to me, and I've sort of opened my mouth and said the wrong things a lot of times. But this felt very edited and unrecognizable to me. That's the tone of that article. And not only do I think I did a lot of damage to myself, but it was sort of full of half-truths, not untruths, just half-truths. And I don't know if it was the editor or the woman who wrote the article who just conspicuously left those things out, because she needed to make the article about this kind of fall from grace. I remember saying to her, Max, Max took me on and has been very, very good dealer for me. His space is beautiful, and he's been very supportive. I owe him a lot of money. So I said, don't say anything bad about Max. I think she took that to mean don't put Max in there. So of course he was devastated. That was good. I showed her the model for the Philadelphia project, and I talked about also the kind of, this Columbia job is probably one of the better jobs you could ever get. Not only do I have a great boss, but it's a great university, and the students are terrific. It just, I did mention that I would rather be, I'd rather not be there as much as I am, with as much responsibility, because we're putting a whole department together, so it's kind of a lot of work. So yeah, it was like the bad side, and I would say, yes, I had to get a job, but I got a great one. So it was sort of divided in half, and it kept, so yeah, I thought it was a very, didn't tell the whole story. Very optimistic, just stylistic. My nature is to sort of think, great, we'll get rid of those bums and everything's going to be okay, and I just got to get through this year, and this project is a terrific one if I can make it. But it just really did stop all the studio work, which is what I would rather be doing. But since I'm certainly not on the streets and homeless, for sure. I have a great place in Manhattan,
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
I just thought it might be nice for you to
Yeah.
respond the other way. And
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
tell them, screw
Yeah.
you or whatever.
I was also depressed when she probably, actually I wasn't depressed. I don't know why I had that tone. I like this woman who wrote the article, and I sort of have to think that maybe it was edited by someone else, is what I think.
Could be.
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
Yeah. Because I remember when the photographer came around to shoot the things, he said, could you sit in some restaurant and look completely rejected? And I thought, you've got to be putting me on. Like, why would they do that? And then it dawned on me, and then I read this sort of thing about the Odeon, and I thought, did I say that? How could I have said that? It's like so shallow. And I also thought it made all artists seem like real whiners. And sort of like, they lost their racehorses and their sort of house in you know, the Hamptons, and it's really tough now. Yeah, I mean, it just seemed very, you know, I mean, I didn't like the way any of us came off, really, except a few people. Schnabel said he was too busy redecorating his house. I thought that sounded good.